This podcast is brought to you by Paramount Plus and by Casa de la Zissa.
And I'm glad I did because there was a lot of notes I wrote where I was like, why did I write this again? Oh yeah, right. This episode sucks.
Welcome, everyone, to the Final Frontier. Today, we're talking about the alternative factor. I wish we were talking about an alternative episode, but I digress. So we're just going to dive right into this one because it's a trippy one.
I believe I said in a previous episode that there is yet to be a bad episode of this show. I was wrong. This I
Oh,
think is our
don't
first
yeah,
genuine bad episode.
don't think I didn't think about that as I was watching. I was like, wow, I've just been served a dish of crow.
Right, right. Oh, I ate my words like you would not believe.
Oh,
I've got so many notes. They're gonna wrap it off, and it's just a series of me being like, "What is happening?" I feel like we're
ugh.
burying the lead.
Well, to be fair, if you're watching the show, presumably you have already seen or have just watched this episode, so you know. But this episode takes place between star dates 3087.6 and 3088.7. The in-universe date is still the year 2267, and I apologize because two episodes in a row I've said 2266 and had to fix it in editing. I don't know why because it it's been 2267 for almost a year.
That makes sense.
And the original air date for this episode is March 30th, 1967. And we've seen one of these before. I think we've seen both of these people before, but the episode's written by Don Ingalls. For shame, sir. For shame.
You should. No, no, no. All I'm saying, that's all I'm gonna
Stop
say. It's
it.
just no. Stop it.
In the words of
Bad.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Stop it!
And the episode's directed by Gerd Oswald, who also
Stop it!
Stop it.
and then now we come to, well, no, this definitely won't be the funniest part, but it's probably the most enlightening part. The Paramount Plus description brought to you by Paramount Plus. Justin, take her away.
I mean, it's not going to be the funniest. I've got a slew of notes making fun of it. Anyway, um, okay, so the Paramount Plus description described that a man named Lazarus that seems to be hunting some sort of bad guy. Just immediately, my first question is, I feel like Lazarus is going to be annoying. I was right. And then seems to give me the impression that maybe Lazarus is probably the actual bad guy. And it's oh, so I said Kirk and Spock were hunting had encountered this guy. I thought maybe this would be another Kirk Spock solo adventure. It was not.
Regrettably not. And I gotta, normally Star Trek's naming conventions are pretty insightful, especially when you consider the 1960s. Giving him the name Lazarus actually makes zero sense. This is right up there with somebody in the writer's room saying, well, Lazarus is a cool sounding name. But so Lazarus is the gentleman in the Bible who is brought back from the dead, to paraphrase the Gospels. Lazarus at no point in this episode dies. Well, I mean, maybe, but he doesn't die. He just falls a lot.
He does fall a lot. And I mean
But
technically he
he
does.
never dies.
He's seemingly miraculously he I can't
No, he
question
does
mechanics
not.
yet. It's too early.
He does not miraculously heal. Dr. McCoy works his magic on that clumsy
Clumsy man.
multiple times. Anyway, Spock says at the outset of this episode that the planet has no surprises, which, if you've been watching Star Trek as long as we have now, you know good and well there will be surprises.
That's just the narrative. And there were surprises.
But anyway, our story begins with the USS Enterprise rocked by an energy pulse. Spock informs Captain Kirk that the gravity pull of the planet fluctuated to zero, and the surrounding space momentarily winked out of existence. Oh no, the dreaded overlay footage.
Yo, that's what I said. What's with the visuals? What's with the overlay with the stars? Also, when the mysterious gold shirt lady walked up and handed him the paperwork, he didn't even bother reading it. He just signed it. I want to know what he signed away without even looking at it. He was just like, yeah, didn't even look.
So
Just
this is
using
something,
that
yeah,
auto pen, you know?
yeah.
Haha, topical.
This is something that's always kind of struck me about Star Trek in general, but more so the original series. There seems to be a lot of arbitrary paperwork that the captain has
Right?
to take care of, and it's just
Space travel
probably.
is 90% administrative, Jake.
Well, but it's so much that it requires a signature instead, because in our digital world we now understand that it's just not necessary. So I have to believe this is a byproduct of the fact that it was the 1960s still.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in the Enterprise, is there like an entire room that's just filing cabinets, and the Enterprise is like a ton heavier because of it?
Well, no, because this is a tablet that he's signing, and I don't think this is a direct reference, which, by the way, I'll share with you off air. I discovered something amazing about a Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode that ties into the original series, and it's such a wonderful little Easter egg joke that the writers pulled, and I didn't get it until I was editing the last episode because I had a thought, but I'll share with you. So you guys got to stay tuned until we get to Deep Space Nine
That's
to
fun.
find out that little tidbit. But you will laugh, sir. But I do like the fact, and it kind of makes sense because Captain Cisco does a lot of, like he has to not necessarily submit, but he has to approve a lot of reports. But that makes sense because he's the commander of a space station. So
Right?
there's a lot of commerce coming in and out. There's a lot of, I can see a lot of paperwork for that, but a starship would seem pretty routine.
You would imagine.
Like I
Maybe
would
he's filling out like
imagine.
a food log. He's like, it's just another Thursday afternoon.
Well, and I know at one point there's an episode where he has to like approve like the duty roster or something,
It's
that
something. It's
kind of
something
stuff.
boring. Also, you referenced it, but is winking out a technical term?
Given Spock's description, I'm gonna go with probably not.
Probably not.
It
No.
seemed like it should have been prefaced with, for lack of a better word, Captain.
And then, yes, Kirk says to Spock, "I want facts, not poetry." I'm not exactly sure what about what Spock said was poetry. It's not very poetic, if it is indeed poetry. Um,
Might be Vulcan poetry.
Maybe it's Vulcan poetry. And then yeah, in regards to the actual event, he's something about it not existing. I said a couple of questions which were, I don't fully understand how one measures non-existence. Isn't the sheer fact that it's measurable mean that it exists? And how does a planet all of a sudden having zero gravity equate to non-existence? Space has zero gravity, and it very much exists. They're traveling through it.
Well, I I don't understand your question.
Well, they
It
they said they say when the event happens that for a moment the universe stops existing. So
mhm.
in order for something to be measurable, it has to exist, does it not? So therefore, how do you measure non-existence?
Using the metric system?
No. And then yeah, if their metric for non-existence is that it has zero gravity, but space has zero gravity and space exists. Therefore, something that exists has can exist and have zero
So
gravity.
so technically not inaccurate, but it's a little bit more nuanced. So anything in space has gravity. So when you're flying through space, technically you're well, that's not true. I was going to say if you're in space, you're technically being pulled by some form of gravitational pull. That's actually not true. Stellar density is actually quite small, meaning that the likelihood. Okay, so we did a short on the Average Intelligence podcast where I borrowed from, I forget, Kyle Hill, that's his name. The channel used to be called Because Science, but now it's just Kyle Hill. And he talks about how Han Solo is wrong in Star Wars by saying you have to plot a course when you jump into hyperspace because you don't want to, quote, crash into something. And that's actually like, it would be a colossal waste of time, statistically speaking, to calculate a route through jumping through hyperspace, because the likelihood of you actually hitting something in open space is, it's not absolute zero, but it's like one, you would have to travel through 500 billion solar systems worth of space before you would actually encounter another object.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah, you're not gonna hit asteroid belts every 500.
But that's the
That's
thing,
true.
that's the common misconception, because people are like, well, what about our asteroid belt in the solar system? That includes the asteroid belt. They're not that close together. It's just so immense that when you would take like a bird's eye view, like our weird space
Yeah,
map that we have, like it looks like they're close together, but we're talking millions sometimes of kilometers between
Oh,
asteroids. Like
fair
it's a
enough.
vast expanse. Space nerd stuff. Science is fun, kids.
Space.
Sensors locate a human presence on the planet that was not there before. Hmm, I wonder if those two things are related.
Gosh, I wonder. Geez, G. Willikers. I wonder.
Gee golly
Could
gosh,
it
Spock,
be?
how could this have happened?
Gee,
Space and
gosh, fuck.
space anomaly, and then a random person appears who's also human and speaks English?
Say what? Don't say it isn't so.
It is so, because it's in the script. Spock and Kirk beam down to the planet and find a one man spacecraft. A disheveled man named Lazarus appears and slips off a cliff. He is injured, and Kirk has him beamed to the Enterprise for examination. So we get another visit to Gorn Rock, because
Corn Rock.
that's the
Oh, it's the same.
that's the same location. In fact,
That's
you see the
funny.
same rock.
I didn't even. I was just so distracted by just man, those are some lovely red shirts those gentlemen were wearing. Sure would be a
Ooh,
shame if
yes.
something were to happen to them. Real diverse group of red shirts there. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, there was an instant moment of like someone's dead, someone's
You're right.
dying. This episode disappoints in many ways. We'll just leave it at that for now. But isn't it
Um,
strange? Isn't it strange how all these alien planets look like Southern California?
I mean, it is an odd coincidence, that is for sure, that they all share striking similarity to Southern California.
Yeah.
Also, I'm just when he showed up, immediate red flags, and when he when he fell off the cliff, was that a Wilhelm scream?
Doesn't it sound like...
Nah, dude, it's more like ah!
No, that wasn't it either.
Dude, that was totally it.
Does this predate the Wilhelm scream? And it was a kind of a fun little bit of cinematography when they ran over it. I always like when it does a bit of unique cinematography.
It does not predate the Wilhelm scream, by the way, because the Wilhelm scream has been used in Star Trek before.
Has it? I guess it
Yeah,
has, hasn't it?
I think the Wilhelm scream goes back to the 30s.
I've looked this up before. I can never remember. Yeah, I know it's like an old thing. I have looked it up before.
Have you heard the original recording?
I have, yeah. I went
That's
down a whole
wild.
rabbit hole one day researching it because I was like, where does the Wilhelm scream come from? Where does it get its name? I think the guy who did it isn't even named Wilhelm.
Okay, so it did predate Star Trek, but not by a ton. The iconic Wilhelm scream is a stock sound used in countless films and TV shows, originated in the 1951 Warner Brothers film Distant Drums, recorded on
1951, really?
yep, recorded for a scene where a soldier is attacked by an alligator. And now we're going to see the first Wilhelm scream ever.
It's such a fun bit of movie and television history. Everyone knows that sound, even if they don't realize. But it did sound suspiciously like a Wilhelm scream. I'm just saying.
Probably. And I do want to give credit where credit's due for that stuntman. If you watched our Gorn episode, you know this, but that was actually a really, really dangerous stunt fall considering where they were. Because
There's
those
a few moments in
rocks,
this episode where I went, that
yeah,
looked dangerous.
yeah. Well, the thing is, though, and you get a better sense of this in the Gorn episode, those rocks are really close together and they
Yeah,
live up to their name. They're very jagged. So that could have gone wrong very easily. And the fact that he goes head over feet,
right? Right? Yeah, I look, man, that's ain't no CGI in the 1960s on a television budget, let me tell you.
I'm hoping that that was some kind of dummy, but it didn't look like a dummy to me.
No,
That looked like
it
a
was a
man.
solid. Yeah, it was a solid jump. I mean, hey, he probably had a crash pad. I assume he had a crash pad.
I mean, sure, I'm not worried about the impact itself. I'm worried about like miscalculating that
Oh, for
jump and
sure.
then landing on a sharp rock. That would be ooh. But
Also, my initial thought with Lazarus was my first swing was I thought that he might be another trickster. It was
nope,
not.
just an idiot. Well,
Just
one of
an
them.
idiot.
One of them's an idiot. Oh, spoiler alert. You've watched the episode. You know what's coming. And
You
plus
know it's
it's
coming.
pretty obvious early on what's going on.
Okay, I will say it's not, I didn't find it crazy. Oh yeah, I didn't find it crazy obvious exactly what was going on, but I knew he had to something to anyway, we'll get there.
You knew he was the root of all of this.
He's the problem. Yeah, he's the problem.
Back on the ship, Lieutenant Masters informs Captain Kirk that the mysterious disturbance has drained the dilithium crystals in the warp drive. First of all, Lieutenant Masters is not a lieutenant. She has no stripe on her sleeve. She's an ensign.
I didn't realize that, but I will say, if she is in universe a lieutenant, for the 1960s, a multiple black lieutenants, including Lieutenant O'Hara, that feels ahead of its time. The fact that she is also a science officer just feels progressive to me. I mean, we just cannot be stressed enough how they did not respectfully view black people back then. Put it in perspective, I looked it up. The civil rights movement is still like 10 years old at this point. So culturally speaking, they're still in the middle of it.
Oh yeah, I was going to say they're very much still in the middle of it, and you could make the argument that well, I'm not that the civil rights movement ended per se, but the height of it probably lasted at least until the end of Vietnam, which would have been in the
I would
70s.
I would agree with that. But just the fact that this character generally comes in and it's very apparent she's in charge, not even just like as a black woman, as a black person, but as a woman as well. I don't know. Respect. I know I've shouted out how progressive this show is before, but it impresses me every time.
In the original script, though, Lazarus romantically came onto Lieutenant Charlene Masters to gain her assistance. The two subsequently fell in love, but when African American actress Janet McLaughlin, I hope I'm pronouncing it's McLaughlin, yeah, McLaughlin, was cast as Masters, the romantic angle was dropped. In addition, Gene Roddenberry considered it too similar to the romance between Khan and MacGyver's in Space Seed.
I could see that. I could see
Um,
that.
I kind of wish they'd stuck with it. It might have made this episode more interesting.
I uh,
Hey, at this
yeah, I
point, I'm
don't know.
grasping at straws to make this a better episode.
This climax is messy enough without a romantic subplot.
Well, yeah, but then what would Lieutenant Masters do?
Get knocked out ultimately, like
Hey,
2000.
hey, but she'll get up again.
You're never gonna keep her down.
Ah, read my mind. Ah, well, we are already at the part where we pay for the lights, and it's time to talk to you about the greatest, most bestest, most stupendous streaming service ever, Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus, where all of the Star Trek is. Not
Yes,
just
you
some
can,
of it.
well, not just Star Trek, everything Paramount's ever had. You can get SpongeBob to Spock or Spock to SpongeBob,
It's
however
true.
you prefer. You throw
It's
some
true.
live sports in there, and you got it all. Not to mention your Star Trek adjacent stuff like Galaxy Quest and the Paramount Plus only Star Trek series that you can only get when you subscribe to Paramount Plus.
Like your Jean-Luc Picard comes back and he's old now.
To be fair, I do think they released those on DVD. I could be wrong though, and you can probably
Oh,
buy them on Amazon. But Paramount Plus is better because you get
one
all the
hand.
other stuff.
I just one handle. Okay, you get your SpongeBob's. You get your. I'm pretty sure Hey Arnold is on there.
It is.
Certainly the Turtles, Transformers.
I forgot about the Toidles. Yeah, the Toidles are
Turtles. You
on
got all
there.
sorts of Turtles. The new Turtles show, which like doesn't do it for me. I don't like the animation, but
The
like
kids like it though.
the kids like it. It's real. It's a real Gen Z turtle show.
Yeah, and that's something that's always kind of been the case with the Toidles. They very much cater to the kids at the time, which is
Oh
good,
yeah. It's like
which is
someone said,
very
you know
good.
that Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show? You know how that show's really Gen Z? We're gonna make it even more Gen Z, if that's possible.
Well, I will say this much about Mutant Mayhem. I went into that movie not expecting to like it, and I'll be honest, I didn't love it, but I understand what they were doing and I applaud it.
I'm the same way. I'm like this. I laughed at a lot of it because me and Seth Rogen share a similar sense of humor, but like there were points where I was like, I'm old and this isn't for me, and I understand
Well,
that.
I just
I
I
have
just
my turtles.
yeah. Well, and I just dug the fact that for arguably the first time I've well, no, not even arguably. It's the first time I've ever seen the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles actually be teenagers, and it was kind of refreshing. I
I think
I,
it's
I dug it.
I think it was the first time they were played by teenagers. For me, the
That
turtles have
that
always
is
just
true.
been they've been like they've never been teenagers. Like the first time they've always been like young adults. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. I always
I
got
I
like
I
21 to 25 Surfer Bro.
yeah. Not like my age
my
but that one
my my age Mutant Ninja Turtles. They already made that
yeah,
show Middle Age Mutant Ninja Turtles.
middle-aged mutant ninja turtles where everything just kind of hurts for some reason. They don't know why. It just kind
Have
of hurts.
Have you seen those SNL sketches? They're hilarious.
I feel like I have.
Oh yeah, they're great. They're great. But anyway, as a special gift to our viewers, you get your first 7 days of Paramount Plus free. You can cancel anytime, but you're not going to want to. It's like I said,
No.
SpongeBob to Spock. You got it all.
You're gonna leave that reoccurring payment on. You're just gonna we know you. You're gonna
Yeah,
do it.
you're not even going to go to work. But I mean,
No.
you eventually have to pay for your Paramount Plus, but like you could scale that way back, you know?
I
Like
mean, you could put it on at work. to watch
That's
something
true.
while you're
That's
working.
true. We fully advocate watching of Star Trek on the company's dime.
It's true. You know, it's
Unless
true.
you
Was
work
it?
unless you work for Paramount, which well,
The
I feel like Paramount would be okay with that.
was it? Boss makes a nickel. Boss makes. I make a nickel. Boss makes a dime. That's why Star Trek on company time.
Absolutely. So subscribe to Paramount Plus today, and you too can steal your boss's money. A message from Starfleet reports that every quadrant has been subjected to the same winking effect and electronic disruption. Starfleet fears that the disruption may be a prelude to an invasion and has ordered all ships except the Enterprise to leave the area. Kirk is ordered to find the cause of the disturbance.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
So prelude to invasion. Who's being invaded? What's being? Is the whole universe being invaded? What? How'd you come? Do your work. Show your work, Kirk. I want to see the work.
well, technically, that's not Kirk's work. That's Star Trek. That's Starfleet. That's Starfleet being like, "Oh no, something happened that we didn't see, and we're gonna like." I just gotta say, move Starfleet, move. It's like, yeah, you're the only ship there, so go check it out. Never mind the imminent danger. You know,
Right.
almost certainty of death.
Right. Also, like, okay, it's just like a lot of this episode is like, hey, isn't this reality bending weird? We've never seen this before, except we totally have last week with Trelane. Remember, everyone remember Trelane? Nobody remember that guy? How he could bend reality? He was a
Yeah, that dude.
future dude.
In
No,
fact,
no one remember that.
Kirk should have just been like, we've seen this before. It's some interdimensional being. Like, we got this. The other thought I had as all this was going on is that it's Lazarus. It's definitely Lazarus. I don't know how, but it's definitely Lazarus.
It's him.
There's something to be said with understanding that generally speaking, I believe in the medical field, the phrase goes, if you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. And
Right?
in computer operations, it's not a defined saying, but basically it's like, when did the thing start breaking and what changed before the thing started breaking? That's probably what's breaking the thing.
Was it? It walks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. It's a duck. It's probably a duck.
Might be a goose.
Could be a goose, but it's a good chance it's a duck.
Yeah, they have similar gaits.
That's true. Geese are
But
a
then
little
again,
bigger, though.
then again, so do horses and zebras. So,
That's what I'm saying.
which funnily enough, I learned this recently. Zebras are not horses.
Zebras are not horses.
It's very coincidental that they look similar, but zebras are not horses. I believe they're actually more closely related to donkeys, but even
Yeah,
then, still different.
they have very weak backs. Not good for carrying
Not good for
stuff.
riding. Not good for much of anything, actually.
I mean, they look pretty.
I mean, yeah, there's that, and they provide food for lions. But
This is true. They do provide food for lions.
this is also the first time that this is the first time that live two-way communication with Starfleet Command is depicted. In previous episodes, communication with Starfleet Command was through delayed radio messages that Lieutenant Uhura had to patch through.
Oh yeah,
So
oh yeah.
this is
That's
the
the
first
point.
time they have a Zoom meeting together.
The first Zoom meeting, first Star Trek Zoom meeting.
Starfleet finally caved and bought that, Enterprise license.
They upgraded to the 32.4
Ooh.
gigahertz internet connection.
Ooh. Lazarus periodically fades in and out of the universe, encountering a look-alike enemy in a dimensional corridor, creating an energy wink. Spock reports a rip in space and time on the planet. Lazarus says his enemy, trying to destroy the universe, is causing the phenomena. Lazarus demands dilithium crystals so he may fix his ship and continue to fight his enemy. Kirk refuses. Lazarus steals dilithium from the Enterprise and is caught. Lazarus denies the theft and blames it on his nemesis.
Okay. So I have a bunch of notes. A bunch of notes about Lazarus from our first introduction to him. Number one, what is going on with this man's facial hair? Either commit to a beard or to a goatee. You can't pull off both. His facial hair feels offensive. It's giving me real Fu Manchu energy.
Oof.
The weird lighting effect on the eyes to make him look sinister is back.
Yeah, the Charlie X effect.
Yeah. And then he's like, "Oh, you have to believe me. Do you believe me? No, strange man. I do not believe you. You are very suspicious." And then Kirk's like, "Why would?" Then the guy's like, "Why would you believe him over me?" And so, to which I said, "Did that guy seriously ask Kirk why he would believe his second officer over him, a guy he met 15 minutes ago?"
Makes no sense, I
And
tell you.
And then Solid Bert, when Spock was like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said, "Well, I'm not saying this. I am saying you're a liar,"
I've simply made the logical deduction that you are a liar.
which I just wrote a solid burn from Spock. Big note, big long note. On the universe slipping as you describe it, the big fight. This is probably going to end up being a long note, so bear with me. But I looked down at my phone to take notes for like, I swear, a second, and Kirk and Spock was there. And then I looked back up, and suddenly it was two invisible people fighting, and I had no idea what was happening. So I had to rewind it and rewatch it because what the and then just a series of notes of what is happening, who are these people, why are they fighting, what is going on. They're indistinguishable from one another. I can't tell what's happening, and he's clearly the thing. He's causing the thing.
When all that was going on, I was like, this is making me think of something, and I couldn't remember. And then when I was writing my outline, I realized what it was. It was giving me real Hypnotoad vibes.
Yeah, I can see why you would say that.
Which, for those of you who
Uh,
don't know, Hypnotoad is one of my favorite Futurama jokes. And in fact, I think on
Press
more
the
than one.
Hypnotoad.
Yeah, all praise Hypnotoad. But I believe at the end of at least one episode, it's just like a solid 10 minutes of Hypnotoad on a white
Yeah,
screen,
he's my
which is just beautiful. So yeah, every time I was, being presented with this really psychedelic interdimensional shoving girl fight,
just
I just like imagine Hypnotoad fading in from the
I
background and
I'm just gonna mention him now. I just have a series of notes complaining about the effect and how like it looked bad. It just looked bad. It was like I say, you can't tell what's happening when it goes on. Like it gave me a headache. It just doesn't look good.
it's I'm gonna chalk it up again in defense of the show. 1967, your special effects are limited. It's not like today where you can very
Ah,
easily, mess with filters and the color and, we can even like mirror the image or with a click of a button. It was harder back then. But at the same time, I think there might have been some people watching this being afraid that they accidentally ingested some sort of narcotic.
I did. I was like, have I taken? Yeah, I had a moment where I thought I was losing my mind more than once in this episode, where I was like, what is happening? Why are they not explaining this? And then they never do. We'll get there. We'll get to the mechanics of this later.
Did you notice the moment where Kirk's speech and his mouth movements don't match up, and it's clearly an overdubbed line?
Let's have it the truth this time.
Because
No.
my only guess is that they wanted to change the dialogue, but unfortunately, they do this on a close up of William Shatner.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's not. It's not the time.
And the thing is, that was on the Paramount Plus version, so I know it's in the original version
Yep.
because they didn't correct. Which I mean,
There was a moment where there was a line of dialogue that was said. I'll mention it when we get to it, but where I wasn't sure. I think it was meant to be Kirk, but it didn't sound like William Shatner, and I got confused. But this time I went, oh no, maybe that was Spock. It was hard to tell. So I didn't notice that specifically, but I can believe it.
so that was fun. I noticed it immediately, and I was like, oh, they
Oh no, the
ADR'd that.
bad ADR.
I mean, as good as ADR can be for a live action show.
It's true.
That's why to this day, I don't like dubs of live action movies unless it's a comedy and done for comedic purposes. Looking at you, Kung Pao, Enter the Fist. But
That movie was really silly.
your clothes are red.
I mean, admirable movie, but it didn't work for me. It did when I was a kid, but as an adult, I was like, this is not working for me.
It's not supposed to work for you. But anyway, Kirk beams to the planet with Lazarus and a security team to seek this enemy. Lazarus has another dimensional corridor episode and had returned to sickbay, meaning he fell again. And at this point, I'm watching the episode. This dude falls a lot.
Very clumsy dude. Is it the point where Kirk says that what is happening is hard to believe in the I think in the captain's log? Yeah. Okay. Hard to believe, and I've already alluded to this. You've literally encountered reality bending beings before with advanced technology. Unless that hasn't happened yet. Check the star date, because they chronologically it might not have happened yet.
We have traveled back in time for this episode, so
So this is
That's where
pre-Trelane. Okay, I'll give it to him then.
I don't
I will
know
allow
that
for
it I don't know that it's pre-Trelane, but it is certainly pre the last non incorporeal beings we saw that made things hot to touch when you were being violent.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about those guys too. Exactly, it's like the fourth set of interdimensional being. Also, you mentioned him going after the dilithium crystals. When she walks in and mentions checking the dilithium crystals, and his chair swings around. He's like, "I'm sorry, did you say dilithium crystals?" Like it's just like, yeah, that's immediately suspicious.
That's suspicious.
You're immediately suspicious, sir.
So Lazarus explains to Kirk that he is a time traveler. This is the good Lazarus, the calm Lazarus.
Yeah, okay. See, that's my thing, and the mechanics of like them switching is never explained well. Like, wait, so they just randomly swap places, so he's chilling in
No,
the
I
other
think
universe
I think he has to win the fight
in
first,
order
and
to
then he
come
can jump over. Yeah,
jump over, and then he sends the other guy back, and then when it
by
happens,
virtue of them being from opposite dimensions. I think the way it works is one they can only coexist when they're in that sort of interdimensional tunnel. So when
right
one guy jumps to one side, the other one automatically gets sucked into
to
the
the other
other one.
side.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
so them
think.
fighting is because I'm just like the guy. It's never made clear, other than like yeah, the I guess the good one, quote unquote, is the one who's not injured. That's the or that's the bad one.
Correct. No, I think
It's
the injured one is the bad guy.
it's never really made exceptionally clear, like which one is doing what and what his objective is at any one time, and it's really confusing. It was really confusing.
Well, I mean, kudos to the actor for, I mean,
The
effectively
performance
enough,
is solid.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, playing two different people and you being able to understand very quickly that these are two different people based on their mannerisms. The good Lazarus explains to Kirk that he's a time traveler. His spaceship is actually a dimensional corridor gateway, and the planet below was once his home world. Lazarus claims his enemy destroyed his civilization in the past, for which this Lazarus has chased him for centuries. Kirk is puzzled by Lazarus leaping in this universe. One minute he is wounded and insane, and the next minute he is strong and rational. Both Kirk and Spock realize the answer is that Lazarus is actually two different beings. One, this universe, insane, and the other, the antimatter universe, rational. Kirk and Spock develop a hypothesis that Lazarus's enemy is his counterpart from the antimatter universe. If he and his anti-self contact each other within either physical universe outside the dimensional corridor, they would annihilate both the matter and antimatter universes. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So
I mean,
okay.
like it does in the sense that that is theoretically at least what would happen if matter and antimatter combined. But these are two corporeal beings. Like it would just be another dude. And
Okay.
they contradict this immediately in the 2009 Star Trek, where original Spock and Kelvin Spock exist not only in the same timeline but in the same room talking to one another. So
Um. Okay. So there's that bit where where Kirk grabs onto his shoulder and is yelling at him or whatever. I just had a note that says Kirk should hand that man a razor and encourage him to shave off that ridiculous facial hair. As you noted, this man is clearly insane. And when they went down to his ship to find the dilithium crystals, just my question was how or why would the crystals be on his ship? How on earth would they would have noticed had he beamed down? Wouldn't they? He would have had to use the transporter to beam down in order to put the crystals in his ship. Wouldn't they have noticed that he'd used the the teleporter to get down to his ship? And also just the question of why do they keep doing things on the whims of a clearly insane man?
Lazarus slips away from sickbay and creates a diversion in engineering to acquire the dilithium. With the stolen crystals, he beams down to the planet to repair his ship.
So it's at this point that we've revealed the big twist. He's a time traveler.
What a twist!
Which I don't know, just kind of feels like putting a hat on a hat. So I didn't know before the reveal that he was a time travel. That just says, "Would you believe me if I told you this is about to get stupid?" And then the next note is a time traveler. What? Yeah, I was right. It was really stupid.
Stop it!
Go on.
Technically, is he a time traveler or an interdimensional traveler?
He says time travel. I don't know. They never
Well,
differentiate.
Trunks says time traveler too, but technically he's a universe traveler.
Multiverse theory is a
Thank you, multiverse theory, for making this
God.
even more complicated.
It's confusing. And yeah, when he does the distraction, them breathing in that smoke, that whatever that vapor was, I said note that can't be healthy. Good on them for powering through those lines. That could not have been healthy to breathe in.
Why, that's asbestos vapor. Does
Yeah,
nothing to your lungs.
right? Like in order for it to look that visible on camera, it had to have sucked to breathe in. It's just
Why,
the
it's
way shit,
vaporized. Why, it's vaporized fiberglass.
just cutting up your lungs. Say the lines.
Don't mind the blood, it just means you're still alive.
Feel that punching in your chest? Don't worry about it.
Kirk follows, but the time machine activates just. Okay, it's not a time machine. Kirk follows, but the machine activates just as Kirk enters the ship, teleporting Kirk to the antimatter universe, where he meets the anti-Lazarus, which he's met before, though?
Yeah, okay, so I'm confused because they said that the entire crux of this conflict is that the two of them can't meet because if they do, matter and antimatter will meet and it'll cause the destruction of both universe. But is Kirk not made out of matter? And by going into the antimatter universe, is that not matter and antimatter meeting?
To be fair, I think that Kirk and Spock are using matter and antimatter as more metaphorical here, not so much literally. Because, yes, to your point, if Kirk is matter and that universe is antimatter, which doesn't make any sense because it looks very matter to me.
Well, it's very matter.
Yeah, I think it's more metaphorical, but that would also kind of allude to my point where they're still made of the same stuff, so there would just be two of them, in which case this episode need not happen. And why does Reasonable Lazarus not just kill Crazy Lazarus and be done with all this nonsense?
They don't make any compelling case as to why.
Like
The resolution of
I'm
this
not
episode's
advocating
messy.
yeah, like I'm not advocating for violence here, but this seems like a really easy solution.
Yeah, it's just a series of notes of I'm confused. None of what he is saying makes any sense. So are they switching because of the corridor? Is it happening randomly? Is the one controlling when it happens? Like their conflict is never explained well.
No, but you know one thing that can be really explained well, music, with help from this sponsor.
CDZ Collegia Musica is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It is a kind of school of music, a concert series, and an agency that promotes the musicians, dedicated artists, and educators who we feature as our performers. The goal of the Collegium is to bring community together through music performance. These performances vary in musical style from classical to jazz, and music from different parts of the world, from India to the Middle East, that'd be like Persia, and Japan, and China. The goal is to also educate us to how music functions not so much as a musical universal language, because there are differences in the way that these languages of music are expressed, but to educate us to be able to be more appreciative not only of the music but the culture it represents. And by doing this, it brings community together.
The anti-Lazarus admits to stealing the Enterprise's dilithium to prevent his doppelganger from using it to invade the antimatter universe outside the dimensional corridor. He informs Kirk that his people believed two universes existed, and when his matter counterpart learned about it, he went insane and became obsessed with destroying his doppelganger. He tells Kirk that only by destroying Lazarus's ship, which would also destroy anti-Lazarus's ship, while the two Lazaruses are inside the negative magnetic dimensional corridor which links the two universes, can both universes be saved? Kirk states that the disruption of the ships, which are portals, would trap the two Lazaruses in the corridor throughout time.
As you're saying this out, okay, My thought when I was watching this was just why and huh?
What?
But just as you're describing this out loud, you're saying the words out loud, huh? And why?
Stop it!
Like
Why
it's
does it?
so confusing.
Why doesn't Anti-Lazarus just destroy his own ship?
Why do they both need to be trapped in the portal forever? And is
Yes,
it just them?
this. Okay, so like I take back what I said. You don't even need to kill one of them. Just break the ship.
Just break the ship? Just seems like you could
That's
break the ship.
that's all you need to do. If they're all tied together, break the
Well, that's why
ship.
I'm like, him being a time traveler is a hat on a hat. Because like it's okay, so is it the time machine is causing the rift that already pre-exists to be splintered open, and without the ship there, it doesn't splinter. It's not explained well, which is really just not. It's on Star Trek like, because Star Trek it usually explains everything in a way that even if it's dumb, you're like, okay, I get this. This makes sense. This follows a certain semblance of logic. This follows no logic.
None.
That's
Or
dumb.
since Kirk has never had any scruples leaving somebody on a planet to die, phaser the ship, leave Lazarus there, and be on your merry way.
Oh, I'm sorry. He disappeared randomly.
Weird. So weird.
It's weird how he just exploded, spontaneously. That's
Wait a minute.
odd how that happened.
Wait a minute. What do you mean exploded? Your report said disappeared. Disappeared, you know,
All I'm saying,
vaporized. It
couple inches to the left, you make it, you miss here, you miss there, you explode a body, and then just I love I love the ending where everyone they all look at each other and like, let's just pretend that didn't happen and move on with our day. We're not gonna acknowledge that.
that seems like an episode of Star Trek Night Shift would start, and everybody's just kind of leaving the bridge, just kind of like not necessarily sad, but just kind of like, oh, what a day. And then the night crew's like, what happened to these guys?
What did they go through? And since this is an alternate universe, it's funny enough. I saw my dad, um, during my vacation, and he's a big Star Trek guy. He already answered this question, but I'm going to ask it for the fun of the show. Is this connected to the mirror universe at all?
See, I thought that it doesn't seem to be, but
According to him, he said it doesn't. He said it's not connected.
it's never explicitly connected, no. But I have another fan theory. Paramount initially said that Discovery and Strange New Worlds take place in the same continuity as the original series, Next Generation, all those shows. But it can't because of things they've done in the stories. So my little thing is that antimatter Lazarus exists in the universe in which Strange New Worlds and Discovery take place.
I could see that. I mean, it's tough because okay, based on my cultural limited knowledge of the mirror universe in the original Star Trek, is they're explicitly evil, right? That's the gag. And Lazarus, antimatter Lazarus, he seems like he's technically the good one, and our Lazarus is the evil one. So technically, his is not an evil universe. So it's a different universe.
Well, so for example, it's established later in the Mirror universe that the Federation, well, their version of the Federation, the Empire, is a lot more Klingon-like, and the Klingons and the Romulans are, can't remember if they call them a Federation or it's some sort of democratic sounding alliance. I think they call them the Alliance. So basically, everybody that is antagonistic in the like prime timeline is now on the side of good. And then when you get to Deep Space Nine, because every series has mirror universe episodes, it's kind of become a
Yeah.
trope of Star Trek. And so it's interesting because like the Cardassians are part of the Alliance in the mirror universe, and the Bajorans are siding with the Empire, which is really weird, but it jives with how the mirror universe is sort of established.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's fun. Mirror universe episodes are fun, and the actors love it because they all get to ham it up.
I'm super excited
Yeah,
for it.
not a visitor and Scott Bakula kind of stand out for just really milking it and just chewing the scenery and having a ton of fun with it.
That's the place to do it. So yeah, so this does not connect seemingly to the mirror universe. This is an
It doesn't
unrelated
seem to.
on a separate. So we can now establish that there is in fact a Star Trek multiverse, more than one Star Trek alternate universe.
By my count, there are at least four.
Interesting, right? Because you
Well,
got Kelvin timeline, original timeline. That's two. Antimatter's three. Mirror universe is four.
And then
Is there more?
actually, well, I say at least 4 because this is assuming that my theory is correct, and Antimatter Lazarus is the same universe
Right.
as Strange New Worlds. So theoretically, there's at least 5, and if you count the Orville, there's 6.
I'll count the Orville. I
I'll
think
count the Orville.
I think straight up they should have on the Orville season 4. They should have an episode where Kirk and Spock come in, but then Kirk is also played by Seth MacFarlane doing a William Shatner impression. That'd be so funny. I
That would
totally
be
watch that.
so funny. I would have watched the hell out of that. Which I'll be thankful for Orville season 4. I'll be thankful for that.
Look, it's what I'm waiting for. It's what I'm hoping for. He finished Ted season 2, which I'm hoping will free him up to do Orville season 4.
But another fun fact, though, along with the episode Friday's Child, this is one of the only 2 episodes where outdoor planet scenes are filmed both on Desilu's Stage 10 and on location at the Vasquez Rocks.
Really?
Originally, all planet-side scenes were scheduled to be filmed on location, but due to the turmoil during production, director Gert Oswald couldn't finish shooting at Vasquez. Matt Jeffries and the art department prepared a spot on Stage 10 which could accommodate the missing alternate universe sequence.
Oh, where they're
So-
fighting each other. Oh, okay, interesting.
Well, no, the antimatter universe, that was those scenes were on Studio 10, Stage 10.
It doesn't look it. Doesn't look it.
No, they did a pretty good. It looks different enough to be like an alternate universe, but it looks similar enough to be an alternate universe. Should have thought about that before I said it. You know what I mean.
I'm picking it up.
Just Hypnotoad.
All praise be to the Hypnotoad.
Kirk confronts the madder Lazarus. I'm just gonna say mad. Kirk confronts the mad Lazarus and pushes him into the dimensional door. Kirk heads back to the Enterprise, ordering the ship's phasers to target the dimension ship. Why? Why do you have to push him in first? Just shoot the ship.
Shoot the ship.
The problem is solved either way, but this way you don't have to lock the sane Lazarus in a permanent purgatory.
I just don't understand. Was the implication being that if they didn't, bad Lazarus would continually try to break into the universe and try to kill him? Is that why?
Maybe, but it's okay. It's established that in order for them to connect, this is established in episode, in dialogue, that they are connected by that ship. And if one ship is destroyed, the other ship will disappear. So in order for him to get to that alternate universe, the other Lazarus would have to build the same thing.
So does the corridor only open when someone's inside it? Like, could they not have tossed bad Lazarus in there, blown up the ship, and called it a day and trapped him in there alone?
I think how it works is when one Lazarus jumps in, the other one's pulled in. I think that's why he has those episodes.
Oh, okay. Here's my response to that response would be the fact that we are self-filling this in should tell you that this is poorly written.
Yeah, because we're trying to make sense of it. And yes, I understand the absurdity of trying to make sense of a 1967 space opera episode.
Look,
but
okay.
The internet.
Look, okay. Up until this point, all of this has made sound sense. This is the first episode, I would say, that while, yes, a lot of this show is silly, it is at least grounded in a reality or a scientific explanation that, like, even we recently had our episode with your mom come out. Even that episode explains itself. It's a weird rock creature, but it explains it in a way that you're like, okay, I understand how this works. I understand how this is working. This never explains itself in a way that makes sense.
Yeah,
Not to me anyway.
Yeah, it was a rock monster.
There's just a point where Kirk and Spock are just saying science jargon that is meaningless. And that's how you know that this episode, nobody could figure it out in the writing.
Well, and I gotta say, nobody does techno babble better than Chief O'Brien, but this is up there.
It's just bad. Okay. My final note just is this episode is very bad and nonsensical.
Stop it!
It really is. It's quite bad. In fact, the title of this episode, as you have noticed, is "Can we get an alternative episode?" Because it's bad.
It's bad. I was disappointed. I was disappointed. I watched it twice, although I'm glad I did because it's one of those like I had to read. There's one of those episodes I had to go back and rewatch segments of it to just be like, okay, what? What? Did I miss
Huh?
something?
Just some fun facts. So you'll appreciate this because I don't think you know this. John Drew Barrymore was cast as Lazarus, but failed to show up for filming without explanation. The part was quickly recast by Robert Brown. The producers filed a grievance with the Screen Actors Guild, which suspended Barrymore's membership for 6 months, preventing him from working as an actor during that time.
When you say John Drew Barrymore, you mean Drew Barrymore's dad?
Yep, the
Huh.
same.
Huh. Weird. I know him by name, but not by much else. Wait, really? Drew Barrymore is named after her dad? Nothing
Apparently.
screams I wanted a boy quite like naming your daughter after you.
I don't think that's her first name, is it? I think that's her state. I think that's her SAG name. Hang on,
Oh,
I'm gonna.
is that her SAG name? Oh, okay,
I
fair
don't.
enough.
Well, I mean, it is her SAG name because that's how she's always billed. But oh no, that
I
is
can,
her name is Drew Blythe Barrymore.
yeah, again, nothing says I wanted a boy quite like.
Some more fun facts, though. Technically speaking, this is the first parallel universe episode, but not the parallel universe, which has been lovingly dubbed the mirror universe. But
Yep.
I don't think it's actually called the Mirror Universe in that episode. I could be wrong. I may be misremembering. I believe it's always referred to as parallel, but could be wrong.
Huh.
But the episode is titled Mirror Mirror, so that would be why
People called the Mirror
it's
Universe.
like a mirror. And at the 50th anniversary Star Trek convention in Las Vegas in August 2016, fans voted this the ninth worst episode of the Star Trek franchise, not just the original series, because I would definitely vote for this being the worst episode, at least thus far, of Star Trek, the original
Franchise.
series.
It's the worst so far. It's the first episode I'd say is actively bad.
And
Like it's active.
as of 2016, I believe that was up to Enterprise. So we may have other candidates, but
Surely there's got to be an episode of Star Trek Discovery that's not Discovery.
well, no,
Discovery?
probably Discovery's pretty hated.
Yeah, it's the one that nobody likes. But yeah, there's got to be an episode of Star Trek Discovery that's worse. Surely.
I don't know. This is pretty bad. This is real
This
bad.
is this is nonsense. It's not even like fun nonsense. It's annoying, underexplained. It's one of those like it complicates itself by adding layers that are unnecessary. Like him being from another universe was enough. You didn't need his spaceship to be a time machine. And him being a time travel just seems to exist to facilitate the explanation of the time of the corridor, which you didn't need.
Yeah, I know, right? You
He
just
also
didn't need it.
seemingly want to do a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing, but they don't at the same time because they don't really do anything with the concept of them switching, really.
Not really. He just falls down a lot.
You're just like, oh, I swapped. I'm the one who took your batteries, so he wouldn't get at them. And you're like, oh, that's not really clear on screen, but all right.
Also seems like a really convoluted and complicated way to do it. Instead of just saying,
Okay.
"Hey," at no point did Lazarus think to go, "Hey," until the end of the episode. It's like, "Hey,
Yeah, yeah,
there's actually two of me. One of them's, you know,
yeah, yeah. I thought about that when I was watching it the second time. Like, wait, why doesn't he just be like, oh yeah, hey Kirk, by the way, periodically me and another version of me are gonna swap places, and the other version of me is a little few sliced bread short of a loaf, if you know what I mean.
So what you
Don't
should
trust
actually,
him,
yeah, so what you should actually do is put me in the brig so that when I do switch, you'll see, and then you'll
right?
know what I'm talking about. And
It's,
then when I
you
come back, we can chat and we can figure out a plan to defeat this nut job. But
you know how you have
instead,
those, right? Oh yeah, it's like yeah, we're doing everything on the whims of a nutcase. But I'm just saying, you have a thing that you could turn to stun. If I have a crazed look in my eye.
well, speaking of other examples, given this episode and its title, let's give him an alternative episode to watch
Oh.
instead of his. Is there an episode? I can't remember. Is there an episode of the Orville that's kind of similar to this?
I mean, the claw, not really. They
No,
haven't
yeah,
really.
no, yes, yes. When past Kelly, that's a good episode.
Ooh, past Kelly's a good one. That leads to a solid two-parter
Yeah,
where she goes back to the past and changes the future. They haven't.
that's in season two. Yeah,
That's yeah, I believe the end of season two. I
it
believe
is.
is the
Yes, it is the
yeah.
end of season two.
And They
Solid
haven't
two-parter.
they haven't done a good mirror episode on the Orville yet, which shocks me
Well,
considering how
because
iconic that is.
I think the Orville understands though that, and they actually go through this and they kind of explain it. Benefit of hindsight because season three of the Orville came out in 2021. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
about 2020, 2021, something like
Yeah,
that.
in there. Benefit of hindsight. they actually sort of they explain away very quickly the concerns of new Kelly and old Kelly being some sort of paradox, because it's like, once again, from that moment on, once the two Kellys are in the same timeline, their lives diverge.
Yeah. Now
You
her
know,
future is in the future. Yeah.
yeah,
She hasn't.
instead of
She never experienced that, so therefore she wouldn't remember
yeah,
it.
but therefore she's also a different person because she didn't go through the things
Yeah.
that our
Which is
Kelly went
why
through.
when they send her back, they have to mind wipe her in order for it to fix it in order for it to resolve themselves. But I would watch an episode where you get Evil Ed.
Oh,
They
I
should totally do
absolutely
that.
would. So that's a much better episode, especially if you haven't seen the Orville, you probably should watch it to get up to that.
Or
But
a solid alternate timeline episode is the one with alternate timeline or gets left in the past Gordon.
oh,
Ooh, Scott Grimes. Scott Grimes, a hell of a performance from Scott Grimes.
that's a
Severely
very, very
underrated.
good one. Yeah, that's a very good one. Another interesting one. This one you could probably watch if you haven't seen the Orville. It's not great by comparison, but it's not bad when Charlize Theron guest stars as the planet broker from not the planet, but the ship broker from the
Yeah,
future.
that's season one. They're still getting their foot, but you know what? I don't think there's a
It's
bad
not as
episode of
good.
The Orville.
That's
No,
true. I can't think of there are some that I'm less interested in, but I wouldn't call them bad.
no,
And
yeah, they're
that's just because even in season one, by episode two really sets the bar. And
yeah,
not to say episode
definitely.
one's bad, but you're just getting to know everybody, that kind
Yeah,
of
it's a
stuff.
pilot. A pilot is always a little. It takes a minute for it to get its feet.
Happy Arbor Day.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm with Ed on that one. Happy Arbor Day is the best one.
Yeah.
You can skip over the alternative factor, but what you can't skip over, and this is kind of a real shame because I can honestly see this episode turning some people off, which means
Yeah.
they may have missed the next episode, which I know at one point it was voted the best episode of Star Trek ever. I don't know that it still is, but I know at one point it was voted the best. It's my favorite episode of the original series. And coming up next week is The City on the Edge of Forever. Justin, would you like to take a stab
Okay.
at what we'll be
Well,
seeing
okay.
next week?
So with a title like City on the Edge of Forever, kind of giving me like a lost city or like a city like isolated kind of city, maybe kind of like a Candor. That might be an obscure reference for people. So I'm gonna guess that it's a city trapped in time, trapped in a specific moment of time, and it's a time loop episode. We're going time loop.
No, but time travel is involved.
Ooh, we're doing a time travel episode.
It's real good. And the thing is, everybody, and by everybody I mean William Shatner, DeForest Kelly, and Leonard Nimoy, everybody bats 1,000 in their performances.
Bringing their A games.
Specifically DeForest Kelly and William Shatner, but
Ooh.
Leonard Nimoy gets some great moments too. The guest star, younger viewers may not know her, but anyway, the guest star was a big name at the time. We get Joan
Hmm.
Collins in this episode.
Don't recognize the name, but I'm sure I probably will recognize them.
You'll probably recognize her. Joan Collins I think she's still alive. Um, Big name actress from the UK, did a ton of stuff realistically from the 50s through the 80s. Kind of faded into obscurity by the time the 90s rolled around, unless I'm mistaken, but she's top notch. She plays her character very well. It's my favorite episode of the original series, so I'm kind of bummed that we're getting over it this early, but it's a great episode. It's a fantastic
I
episode.
mean, you had me at time travel. I'm immediately intrigued.
Well, I'll go ahead and give you this one. We go back to the 1930s.
Ooh, the 1930s.
Yeah,
Interesting.
in the old depression. So it's a great episode. But look forward to that next week. You're not going to want to miss it. There's there's going to be jokes, but it's one of those episodes where we just gush over it the whole time because it's awesome. And
I'm okay with that. I could
you
use
can't.
that.
I'll be honest, you can't really take the piss out of that episode because there's nothing. But well, there's a
I
couple
will
of things
I
that
will
will
try my best.
well there's not you can't take the piss out of it because there's nothing bad, but there's jokes to be made, but loving jokes,
Hey,
that
it's
makes sense?
all with love except for
Not
this
in
one.
this
Bad.
episode. I was gonna say this
Bad.
is pure unadulterated hatred. If this were a red shirt, I'd kill it.
If this episode were like a dog, I'd spray it in the face with a spray bottle. Like bad, no biscuit.
Stop it!
It was a bad episode.
It was a bad episode. You did a bad episode on the carpet.
Ugh. Anyway, join us next week, like I said, for The City on the Edge of Forever. And until then, subscribe to Paramount Plus, subscribe to us, and watch long and prosper.
That's long and prosper.
Stop it!